OPR Part 2 on the WarBonnet. So in the first session, we worked on the pink cab area, doing some of the truck weathering and a little bit of the fuel tank, and that explanation and kind of introduction to the railroad guys out there in terms of how do you weather a pre-painted machine like this using the OPR palette. I've set up a new one here, as you can see clearly on screen. That's a brand new happy palette. I double side tape these down to the bench so that I don't knock them over or spill them, and they're easy to work with. Keeps them kind of in place, if you will. And then from there, what I'm going to do is kind of a session 2, sit down and let's continue the conversation in terms of weathering out this machine, because it's not just that one small section. I grabbed my King Art brushes, which are my favorite. Been using them for 20 years, and nothing does the job better than these King Art Original Gold series brushes, which I link in the description down below. That said, you know, when you mix in the palette, I start off with my colors. I work in a light to dark conversation almost entirely, especially from the beginning sessions. You know, I'm sitting down for the first time warming up, so I'm getting kind of a light ochre dust conversation that I want to put down on this fuel tank and continue the weathering in that section. So I look at my paper towel, I wipe my brushes down on that to kind of unload the liquid in there to get to this point here of kind of the paint's ready to go, the brush can hold enough chemical on it to move this conversation forward. And that's the beauty of these brushes. They really do the job better than anything else out there. And so if you're considering that, I do highly recommend them. I've been using them forever. Every project that you've seen that ever come off of my bench has these brushes. So that said, that little sales pitch for you, because you're going to thank me later when you get them, is when you sit down with OPR in the critical phase of this, in terms of if you're new to the hobby, if it's your first session in a while, like you're busy, life, work, etc., a light to dark scenario really kind of gets your brain in the mood of what you're trying to do in terms of that first 5 minutes of trepidation. I'm like, oh shit, how do I start weathering? Well, I preface to you guys as a guideline, the light to dark scenario in terms of whatever colors. I'm working kind of these warm, kind of fuel, dirt, grimy colors on the side of the fuel tank. And so I'm using kind of the lighter tones of this color range first. And then I'm going through a stage of adding a little bit darker browns and eventually getting up into kind of a black grease color. And so using the hairdryer to kind of lock this in place between the layers and stuff, that's the functionality of it. But really that light to dark helps us kind of get our brain in the right tracks, if you will. Pun intended. And so here you go into the darkest of the colors. And again, it's really about the context of how do you weather a machine? And this is to all the gunplow guys out there, aircraft, armor, etc. Yes, we have our references, and many times, at least in the rail conversation, we have really good photos of these kind of things. And so from their terminology standpoint of what you'll hear me swap terms every now and then is they talk about these trains specifically, like 6067, which is actually a fake train, which is kind of ironic, in prototype terms. And so if they're going to do a machine X, Y, and Z, and it's numbered 3, 4, 5, they want photos of that machine number 3, 4, 5, and that's called the prototype. And then they're going to reference that as their weathering guide to what they're going to replicate. And they're going to do that machine specifically. It's the same thing as if you did, an aircraft with tail code, BOC or, Armor Unit 312, Tiger 1 in certain scenarios, etc. It's the same conversation. They just call it a prototype. So that's just so everybody knows the terminology, what that means, because prototype means something else in the military world. So, when you sit down and you do this, and I'm talking light to dark, understand it's the colorway you're involved with. So it can be a light dust scenario, it can be a mud scenario, it could be kind of a rusty scenario. Whatever that is, I kind of put my lighter tones down first in a very simplistic, basic process, not overthinking anything in general in terms of application. The reason is what I want out of this, the end game, the whole purpose of this, is you want a finished look when you're done with the section. You need the layers to get to that goal. Layering is going to be how you achieve that. So light to dark, layer upon layer, hair dryer in between every now and then, kind of lock it in place, add more color. And as you grow in the color conversation in terms of what to do and how to do it, we'll use the rust here, we'll use some sponges, we'll use some brushes, and kind of that scenario of how do I take that up until, say you've got a really, really light colorway. The silver is perfect for it. It's an oxidized, heat-driven conversation in terms of engine heat, in terms of Mother Nature heat. This is a desert scenario, to be truthful. Southwest rail operations in America, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm trying to do is, okay, what's happening here? Well, everything's broken down in terms of age of the machine, 20, 30 years in service, it's oxidizing, the steel's getting affected by the heat, the paint's getting broken down, any kind of clear coat's long gone. And so you're basically dealing with a breakdown in a dry chemical that is now being oxidized chemically in Mother Nature. And so to replicate the rust, light to dark, I'm putting all these kind of lighter orangish rust tones down first. I'm using a sponge, I'm using my brushes, I'm kind of stippling, I'm creating the overall patterns kind of around the shapes of the machine, using the photos as a guide, and then using the blending brushes and kind of the stippling, which is perfect for these flat upper surfaces, to give you kind of that broader, diffused grittiness that you see on real life machines of this nature. The beauty of OPR, what's its display here, is its power to do this between all the scales and all the genres with that simple palette and this group of brushes. It's that easy. There's no other products needed. There's no magic happening beyond just taking your time and then, you know, staying in control and being precise with this and replicating in miniature what you see in the photographs. I try to keep it that simple. I don't have enough time in the world to figure out anything else past this. So if you keep it this simple, what you get out of that is that power. And when you have that kind of power to do that, as I am gesturing around and talking to people in the live stream, so I do apologize for kind of the camera shake and moving stuff around. You know, live stream conversations, it is actual conversation happening. So I am talking and discussing. If you guys want to see that kind of work, you know, happy to leave, you know, jump into the full channel list below, and you can grab this is episode 63, I do believe, where we went over this for a couple hours, you know, very slow and very precise, and, you know, conversation about this entire thing. So that said, editing this down, cranking this into a small, contained little happy video for you guys. I'd also recommend that you take this and you balance that with the book teachings, and understanding that in the books, the RSP books in particular, and allow me to do a little bit of my chores here, it really is about information. It's about how to weather. Don't get super hung up on the machine, if it's a Tiger, if it's a Sherman, or if it's a RailRoad. You know, how do you weather is the core of everything here. I don't play in the clean world. You know, everything I do, every machine I touch is going to be worn out and used in some way, shape, or form. So I use SMO2 as kind of a reference guide in the stream. I pull out the civilian work. That's the work on page. You can see it described one-to-one in the books. And then on video, I'm talking about, or on the stream, I mean, what I'm talking about here is really, you know, blending the paint. You know, you get a little bit of thinner down. You pull your colors over. You check it on the paper towel. And when you see me wipe on the paper towel, it's backwards so that the tip remains sharp and crisp. And then I come in here and apply that color to the model. And now I'm into the kind of the darker stages, having the lighter rust tones down. So it's a light to dark conversation, just to repeat that and reinforce that for you guys. And it's that easy. And it's just really about your brushwork. It's really about maintaining, you know, good consistency. I do have good vision on, so I can see what I'm doing. As we age, as it gets worse, it happens to everybody. So, you know, good reading glasses, or even an optivisor if you need to get, you know, competition level precision in this scale. And that's really what happens at the end of the day. And to the light to dark conversation, it's a guideline. It's not a hard rule. And so you can repeat that. And so if you have a series of layers, you can walk it back through light to dark. And, you know, I'm doing some oxidized fades here. And I'm getting really extreme, even where you look at it and you go, well, that's pretty crazy. But it's the blending process that's really the trick to this. You know, coming in here and working that out into a blending conversation in terms of OPR is an application and it's a blend. And you combine those two as kind of the functional process. How do you do this? Well, you get a little bit of the thinner, a little bit of the paint. You apply it to the model. You have a second series of brushes that are your clean blending brushes, and then you blend it out. So when you're in the blending out is really kind of the shaping of it. So it's kind of like sanding. It's you're shaping this out. Consider it a little bit in that kind of context. A little bit of blending itself is just not blending the paint. You're actually kind of shaping it, controlling it. You're doing a composition here. You're telling a story at the end of the day. And so you have to be aware of your blending strokes are just as important as your application strokes. But at times like this, where you can see me, I can slop down some paint pretty messy here. This is not high precision in terms of what the application is. And I'm trying to show kind of a diffused, oxidized look. And then how do you blend it out with the stippling process, which is just that tapping motion. It's just a little tap, 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 tap. And that's perfect for these upper surfaces. You know, where gravity kind of works a different way. So those are kind of the variables here. It's not a lot. It's easy to master. You know, once you kind of done this a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you know, give yourself some realistic expectations of this. Expect to fail a little bit, and that's how you learn. Buy the cheap models to start with. This is a I believe on sale at my local rail shop, maybe a $15 Athearn 187, Santa Fe 6067, and I've just thrown down some pink paint on top of the red, and then I've gone to the OPR process, which again are all on live stream stuff. You want to check all that out, and if you want to, you can check out an easy way to grab them all if you're rail guys and you just want to focus on those is go into the playlist on the channel, click the playlist, and you should see the tab for the railroad projects, and it'll take you to all these videos if you want to see all the streams. But that's it. I mean, it's, these brushes here are magic. While there's nothing magical, the brushes are, because I don't know how they work like this over time. I've used most of the hobby brushes that are available to us, including some of the high-end Kolinsky sables and some of the other stuff for figure painting, miniature painting. And this series of Golden Taklon, original gold from King Art, they hold the tip over time. I get anywhere from 4 to 6 months per brush usage, and that kind of longevity at a $5, $6 brush is fantastic. So I do highly recommend them. We do have an affiliate link with them. King Art reached out to us after seeing how much work we do with these and how many of you guys buy them. So I've just been doing them and using them for 20 years. So again, brushes, the tools, we need to have the right tool for the job, because you can't streak in 187 unless you have that right kind of tool. So keep that in mind as well. It'll change your life along with OPR. But I'm biased, so I understand that. It is a little bit of a pitch, but I also get that too. And just remember, light to dark, keep your layers. Weathering's about time and age, replicating age of the machine. So you have a combat scenario of a few months versus a civilian scenario of a few decades. So that's really what's going on here. And I need longevity. So the layering is how you create that. Light to dark is the functional process of applying a lighter tone and then building up the darker tones. And this is how you show age. And then you can repeat that process for putting on dust on top of old rust. That's how that happens in the real. Not everything goes to the shop and gets washed off. So, yeah, this was a great session, guys. We have a lot more to come. If you want to take this to the next level, consider our Patreon. The link is in the description down below. And again, I appreciate everybody's time here, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.